English football fans, we often think back to a golden generation, a team under Sven-Göran Eriksson filled with superstars, and we sit and wonder, how did this team not win anything? Now we have the answer. No tactical understanding whatsoever. There's a common theme, okay? English legends, the likes of Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, Gary Neville, have not become good managers. It's almost universal. I don't even know the last time a player who represented England at the top level for a long period of time went on to do anything as a manager. As a coach, maybe sure, but a Zinedine Zidane or Pep Guardiola profile in management, it just doesn't happen. I'm not even sure Wayne Rooney could manage a supermarket at this point. Tesco relegated to being an off license. Do you understand how crazy that is? It's something we've all noticed. No England footballing legend has gone on to have a legendary managerial career. But why? Why exactly are English icons bad managers? Plymouth. That's where our icons are. I shouldn't say that. That's mean for pie. Are you taking the fucking piss? Nobody should have to go to Plymouth, okay? As a general, no human being should feel like they're forced to go there. But that's exactly where Wayne Rooney was forced to after disappointing managerial spells in the Championship and also over in America. And even then, he was lucky to get that job. Who's ever lucky to have to go to Plymouth? The reality is disappointment follows every time we see a legendary footballer that we grew up playing as on FIFA or disappointing us at the 2006 World Cup. They never hit the heights we expect. They never fulfill the fairy tale prophecy of managing the club they have such a Hall of Fame presence at. I mean, Frank Lampard was one of the first to pioneer into the management space. And things, I can't lie, it started well. Relative success at Derby County. Had an exciting team, exciting football. Didn't get promoted, but it was one of the most competitive championship campaigns we've ever seen. Aston Villa and Leeds were in the playoff battle, for fuck's sake. And it featured the next generation Chelsea crew, who he'd then go on to manage when he went over to Stamford Bridge and took the reins there. And this, everyone looked at and was like, yo, this is wholesome. Frank Lampard, Chelsea legend, scored like 150 plus goals for them, and now he's their manager. It started well, but overall, he never really seemed like he was in control, or as if he was bringing anything tactically to the table that was revolutionary for the game. But truthfully, he was probably thrown into that job a little bit too early. I think ultimately he probably needed some kind of mid-table job in between going from Derby to Chelsea to really temper expectations a little bit better. Plus, Roman Abramovich will sack you if you hold the FA Cup slightly wrong, so it was never really gonna last. And then there was the horror show of Everton. Truthfully, he was never really gonna make a comeback at elite level after that. Turning Everton from a mid-table side into one happy to finish like 17th. Now he's at Coventry and mid-table with them in the Championship, and overall, it looks like it's gonna fizzle out at some point. I mean, it's a good job we all had good playing careers, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Fucking hell. No, but genuinely, we are fucking horrific managers. Gary Neville was more of a one and done scenario. Nowadays, we know Gary as a pundit on Sky Sports, like to Jamie Carragher, Micah Richards, Roy Keane. But before he was having awkward interactions with Roberto Mancini and his brother on Sky.
Gary Neville, I bet I never thought you'd be interviewed by me.
He was manager of, at all places, Valencia. Could we do like a bit of an investigation as to how this even came about? How did Gary Neville, of all people from that generation, get a job at a Spanish team? You can't be sexy and play at right back. It's not possible. So realistically, yeah, I think it's the least, even left back, you're left footed. So you might have like a John Arisa ping of a left foot. You can strike a ball from 30 yards. Trent Alexander-Arnold is the one exception. But I'm talking about back in the day, really. Back in Gary Neville's era. Who thought it was going to be a good idea to let that man try and learn Spanish? To be honest, he shouldn't have bothered. He barely got through his first Duolingo payment before he was out of there. Before he could even finish a paella, that man was on a plane back to England after getting sacked by Valencia, leaving them struggling in the table, getting absolutely spanked 7-0. Because like David Coote, he'd get hammered and be out of a job.
That fucking last video can't go anywhere.
Famed for going on mini retirements, as he calls them.
That's a weekend.
It's a weekend. It's a mini retirement.
Gary went on a pretty long one here, and he hasn't really returned since. He was documenting the grief Valencia fans were giving him after leaving the Mestalla for the final time.
I've just been called a melt. Thanks for that.
Then there's Steven Gerrard, a bit more of a recent example. A Liverpool legend, crucial in us winning the Champions League in Istanbul in 2005, starting that comeback, you know, wrestling Liverpool to titles and trophies that they shouldn't have won, when you've got Jimmy Traore playing in the team, Harry Kewell, Igor Bishkan, and a man whose genuine government name was Florent Cinema Pongo. How we won anything is mostly down to him. So you would imagine that leader mentality, that leadership quality that he showed so many times during his playing career would come to fruition as a manager. And to be honest, it started pretty well, taking over at Rangers. Now, what I will say about the Rangers job was, what he did was sensational, but achieving anything there would have been pretty easy. This was a Rangers team that had been through the mill financially, had been relegated and now found themselves back up in the top flight of Scottish football. They weren't good enough to compete with Celtic, but their name and kind of status alone would bring in enough good players to get them clear of every other team in Scotland. So realistically, finishing second every year would have been an achievement. What Stephen actually did was far more impressive than that, taking them from contenders to outright Scottish Premiership champions, and then leading them on a run to the Europa League final, something basically unheard of as a Scottish club this side of the 21st century. He was very impressive there. He didn't leave because he was sacked. He left because he was going to go on to a bigger and better project in England, and he left with a 65% win ratio. Generally speaking, impressive. So he moved to Aston Villa. Now, this was not the same Aston Villa as now. It was a very different side. A lot of the recruitment that we've, you know, praised Aston Villa for in recent years hadn't happened yet, but they had just come off the back of finishing 11th in the league. So with mixed results and then finishing 14th, it was kind of okay, but nothing too special. Improvement would be needed the next campaign. So when he then started the season with 2 wins from 12, not ideal. It was a big dent to his reputation, but a move to Saudi Arabia would surely fix things. It hasn't fixed things for anyone, has it, realistically, to be honest? He would move to Al Ettifaq, and honestly, things have been pretty poor overall. He suffered a horror start to life in the Saudi Pro League in terms of form. He's still there right now, but his side are absolutely nowhere near title contention. When in fairness, they didn't receive the same funding as the other Saudi clubs like Al Ahly and Al Hilal, but there are, you know, European powerhouses that have gone over there. The Lord and Savior himself, Jordan Henderson, embarked on trying to change Saudi Arabia for the better before leaving after like 3 months. Jorginho Wijnaldum plays for them, Moussa Dembele, but he's taken them nowhere near the top of the table, or seemingly been able to have a conversation with anyone for anything longer than 3 words.
What's it? You want it? Tell me then.
Damari Gray doesn't know what he's talking about, and they speak the same language. He doesn't know what chicken and chips is, man, come on. And at the point of recording this video, Al Ettifaq FC currently sits 11th in the Saudi Pro League, 22 points behind leaders Al Hilal, who Alexander Mitrovic and Sergei Milinkovic-Savic, etc. play for, 22 points as well behind Karim Benzema's Al Ittihad, and behind clubs such as Al Khalij, Al Tarwoon, Al Riyadh, and Damak. I don't know a single player that plays for any of those teams at all. But the most egregious, the most heinous criminal of all of these former legends, Wayne Rooney. This man, when I tell you this man has not achieved anything as a manager since retiring, it's crazy. I actually want him to go into darts. I genuinely think he could do a job on a darts tour. He gets beaten by Luke Littler in the quarterfinals. To be fair, right, the job that he started with, Derby County, was borderline impossible. He managed to keep them up in season 1. They were kind of struggling, although a late slump at the end of the campaign saw them survive by only 1 point, but the writing was already on the wall by this point. The next season, they had about £8 in their bank account, and a total of 21 points deducted, which of course saw them relegated from the championship. Next, he travelled over to the US to manage MLS side DC United. A change of pace, more glamorous than Derby County. Though, to be honest, anything is more glamorous than the county of Derbyshire. He played there at the end of his career before a move back to England and Everton. I think that's the way round it was. But after being mathematically eliminated from the MLS playoffs by the early stages, he left the club after 15 matches in charge. Then was the real disaster, Birmingham City. Now, Birmingham was sat 6th in the championship under the management of John Eustace, who by all intents and purposes was doing a great job at the club. However, after a takeover from a US-based company, they decided to switch up the management and bring in a big name. Wayne Rooney was that big name, despite kind of failing in America. Either way, clearly they'd seen him do a a job and thought he was the man to do the job at Birmingham. And he was. The problem was the job was getting them relegated after they'd been in the playoffs earlier on in the season. He was in charge for 15 matches again, winning just 2 of them and losing 9 for a win percentage of 13%. I honestly don't know if any manager in the history of the Championship has ever had a lower win percentage than that. It was disastrous. Birmingham were eventually relegated, having been in contention to earn promotion to the Premier League just 6 months before. And then somehow, despite all of that, he was given a job again in the Championship this season by Plymouth Argyle. Now, you probably know where this goes from here. It was bad. They're currently bottom of the league. He got sacked at the end of 2024 on New Year's Eve, with his side accumulating 18 points in 23 games, taking just 3 points from his last 9 games and never achieving back-to-back wins as Plymouth manager. His win percentage as a manager is less than 25% across 4 jobs. Now, Derby is a tough one because he was given a crazily tough hand there anyway. And to be honest, they fought pretty valiantly under the circumstances. But everything else is a disaster. He wins 1 in 4 of his games at best. Now, I know what you think I'm gonna say. You're probably gonna think, oh, well, he's gonna rip into, I don't know, the golden generation of players that we had and say that the management that they had wasn't good enough, like Sven-Göran Eriksson or their domestic coaches. Even, you know, in the early 2000s, he still had to have tactical awareness and decision-making to make it as a footballer as good as they were and have careers like they did. I don't even think it's their fault, to be honest with you. I mean, don't get it twisted. Does Wayne Rooney tweet like a man who's going to be a successful football manager? Probably not. But realistically, it shouldn't be this bad. I honestly think to understand all of this, we have to take a greater look at English managers as a whole. I mean, you've got a few good options like Eddie Howe and... You've got Eddie Howe. Then you've got some more decent options like Graham Potter, who had a difficult, but like, you know, he was under a lot of pressure at Chelsea and the management and the owners were crazy. But he's now managing, of course, at West Ham. You've got former England manager Gareth Southgate. Call him what you want in terms of being boring. He probably should have won something as England manager with the crop of players he had, but he's done better than most England managers in recent times. Well, even since 66, literally. You've got Sean Dyche, Kieran McKenna, who's technically Northern Irish. Michael Carrick down in the Championship might be promising, but that's about it. There is, generally speaking, a massive lack of English coaching and quality English coaches at the moment. And part of this has like a push and pull element to it. There's a lot of English managers who aren't getting a chance because big clubs in England and the FA, for example, like to offer jobs to players or former incredible legendary footballers like Wayne Rooney or Steven Gerrard or Frank Lampard instead of ones that have better records maybe at a lower level. Frank Lampard getting the job as Chelsea manager as his second job in football is ludicrous. But also at the same time, I think they're getting thrusted into these jobs they're not necessarily ready for because there's not a crazy amount of competition or choice either. Former football legends being bad managers is not unheard of across like other nationalities. Ruud Gullit, great footballer, terrible manager from the Netherlands. Diego Maradona, one of the greatest ever as a player, terrible manager. Lothar Matthaus, good player, terrible manager. Michael Laudrup, great player, terrible manager. But the difference is for every like bad former Dutch icon, there's probably like thousands of good Dutch coaches. You don't have that in England. So that's why you've got Steven Gerrard, Wayne Rooney and Frank Lampard getting incredible jobs. There's not enough competition. There's not enough great English managers that force their way into English clubs. I mean, look, I'm going to get the stats up. Do you know what the percentage of English managers managing Premier League clubs is right now? It's 19%. 1-9, okay? Compare that to the middle of the 90s, it was 86%. And even then, half the time it was like Scottish and Irish managers. And look, the game has changed a lot, okay? And I like the fact, look, listen, I didn't vote reform, I promise. The Premier League has improved so much from the addition of people like Jose Mourinho, Pep Guardiola, and Jurgen Klopp running into this. It's been great. I love how international it is in comparison, but that is a scary statistic as someone who aspires to be an English manager. If you are a coach or you're trying to get your licenses right now and you see this sort of statistic, you might genuinely just give up on the dream. Across Europe, right, when we talk about current managers from the same country as their league, as of December 2024, 16 Italian managers are managing in Italian Serie A. As for La Liga in Spain, you've got 14 Spanish managers. In the Bundesliga in Germany, you've got 9 German managers, and that's the same for French managers in Ligue 1. You've got 2 English managers managing in the Premier League. Jesus Christ. No no English manager has ever won the Premier League since the start, since 1992. And that is scary. And again, I think that is causing a situation. It's kind of yin and yang. They're both having an influence on each other. But I think big clubs, the English FA, I mean, England have just hired Thomas Tuchel as manager. I don't have a massive problem with that. A lot of people were annoyed because he's German.
Seen it all before. I've travelled the whole of Europe. I'm a working man. I love my wife. I love my family. I'm not watching an England team with a German manager.
We're not in the 40s anymore, lads. We're not all 97. It's okay. German people can be sound now. But Thomas Tuchel getting the job not only highlights the lack of opportunities for English managers, but also the lack of numbers generally speaking. And a lot of that is coming down to grassroots level. Being a coach in England is not accessible. If you want to actually get the badges that you need to become a manager, not only do you need £13,000, but you basically need a reference from an elite club or a Premier League club. In Spain, that costs £2,000, and you don't even need the second part, okay? If you want to get the badges that you need to manage at a decent level, it costs you £2,000 compared to £13,000 here. And that is leading to a lack of coaches. As of 2017, you had 15,000 coaches in Spain with a UEFA Pro or A license, whereas that's only 2,000 in England. Of course, there's going to be more high-ranking Spanish managers. There's going to be more good Spanish managers in the Prem than English managers based on those numbers alone. And that's ultimately why there's a lot of young coaches that are probably getting lost to the game. It's too expensive. They can't maybe get the backing of a professional football club. And generally speaking, then when they get there, the big jobs are getting given to former footballers who, with respect, they of course have credentials when it comes to their playing career, but don't actually have the qualifications when it comes to the managerial side of things, or at the very least, the experience. They've got the qualifications because you have to have the licenses, but they ain't got the experience of managing at the top level. It's a systematic issue just from top to bottom. What I'm trying to say is I don't think you get people like Frank Lampard or Steven Gerrard getting such important jobs straight away. If there's English managers that can take some of those middle ranking jobs so they can get a bit of experience in the game before being thrust into the limelight at Chelsea, maybe they'd have a bit of time to actually progress managerially before being thrown into a job that's so pressurized and so important. But either way, let me know what you think down in the comment section. Maybe it's just a tactical thing. Maybe these guys weren't coached enough at a high enough level just purely from a modern tactical perspective in comparison to Spanish managers or Spanish players that have gone on to be successful bosses. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. If you have enjoyed this video though, feel free to slap a like on it, and of course subscribe if you are new to the channel. You can also follow me on social media. It is at @theofficialfng on Twitter and on Insta, and a massive shout out to the members as well. You can click the join button down below. It's the best way to support the channel. But it's been a pleasure ranting at you guys today. Have a wonderful day, enjoy yourselves, and goodbye. Unless you're Wayne Rooney, man. Come on, ruining everyone.